Croatia thought they had survived. 103 minutes played. Portugal 2, Croatia 1. Luka Modric, 39 years old, in what everyone understood was the final World Cup match of his career, was still on the pitch, still fighting, still refusing to let the night end without giving his country one more chance. And then Josko Gvardiol bundled the ball home. The Croatian players exploded. The fans behind the goal erupted in noise that filled the stadium in Toronto, with the specific ecstasy of a team that has snatched survival from the edge of elimination. Players sprinting across the pitch, arms raised, voices breaking, and then silence. Not the silence of a crowd holding its breath. The silence of a stadium trying to understand what the referee was doing. Why he was being called to the monitor. Why, in the 103rd minute of a World Cup knockout match, everything had suddenly stopped. And then the goal was disallowed. Not because a player was obviously offside. Not because a goalkeeper was pushed. Because a piece of technology housed inside the match ball, invisible to every camera, invisible to every player, invisible to every human eye in the stadium, had detected something. A touch. A contact so minimal that the player who made it admitted he wasn't sure it had happened. He thought he might have felt it with his hair. His hair. That is what ended Croatia's 2026 World Cup. Not a foul, not a mistake. A contact so microscopic that it required a waveform sensor inside a football to detect it. Described by a Croatian striker as something he might have felt in his hair. Invisible to broadcast replays and to the referee himself, but registered by the chip inside the ball with the precision that only a machine can claim. Croatia went home. Portugal went through. And the football world asked a question it has been circling for years, but has never had to confront quite this directly. Has football handed its most important decisions to technology it does not fully understand and cannot explain to the people it affects most? To understand why this hurts so much, you need to understand what this match was. It was not a fixture between equals on paper. Portugal are one of the tournament's genuine contenders. Roberto Martinez's squad arrived in the knockout stage with a specific combination of individual quality and collective organization that makes teams difficult to play against and difficult to beat. Cristiano Ronaldo, 40 years old, was in the squad. Whether this was his final World Cup was a question the media had been asking for 4 years, and this knockout match carried the weight of that question. But Croatia's burden was different, and in some ways heavier. Luka Modric, also 39 years old, had led Croatia to the World Cup final in 2018, to third place in 2022. He had, across 2 tournaments, defied every logical prediction about what a small nation with a small population and limited resources could achieve at the highest level. He had done it on the back of a generation of extraordinary talent, players who found each other at the right moment and built something that transcended what Croatian football had any right to expect. This was their 5th attempt, Modric's 5th World Cup, the last one. Everyone knew it was the last one. The players knew, the coaches knew, the fans who had followed the squad for 2 decades knew. And in that knowledge was a specific pressure that Portugal, for all their own tensions and expectations, did not have to carry. The match began with Croatia absorbing Portuguese pressure and waiting for their moment. Ivan Perisic, still one of the most effective wide players at this level at 35, provided it in the 53rd minute. A finish that gave Croatia the lead and the belief that the plan was working. And then came the first controversy. Not the one that ended the match, the one that set the temperature for everything that followed. Portugal won a penalty in the 66th minute. A foul inside the area, reviewed by VAR, confirmed. Cristiano Ronaldo stepped up. He scored, netting his first goal in a World Cup knockout stage in his entire career. 1-1. The Croatian reaction to the penalty decision was visible on the pitch and visible in the stands. Their players protested. Their supporters inside the stadium made their feelings clear. Dalic would later say the referee had not given a single foul in Croatia's favor across the entire evening. Not one. Whether the penalty was the correct decision is something that qualified analysts have disagreed on. The contact was real. Whether it was sufficient to award a penalty in a knockout match is the kind of judgment call that refereeing controversies are built around. Portugal's players believed it was correct. Croatia's players believed it was not. VAR reviewed it and confirmed the original decision. What it created was a match atmosphere already stretched to breaking point before the final minutes arrived. Gonzalo Ramos gave Portugal the lead in the 78th minute, 2-1. Croatia pressed. Modric ran. The clock moved toward full time and then into stoppage time. 10 minutes of stoppage time that felt like the sport asking one more time. Whether this generation of Croatian players had one more miracle left in them. The answer for 102 minutes appeared to be no. And then the cross came from the left. Mario Pasalic arrived into the box. Gvardiol was behind him. The ball reached Pasalic, who nudged it into Gvardiol's path. Gvardiol converted. The net moved. The celebrations began. But VAR had already seen something. The chip. Inside the Adidas Trionda, the official match ball of the 2026 World Cup, sits a sensor system that FIFA describes as capable of detecting any slight contact, displayed to viewers as a heartbeat graphic. The technology sends real-time data to the VAR team, providing information that no human observer and no broadcast camera can match in terms of precision. What the sensor detected was a touch from Igor Matanovic in the build-up to the goal, a touch that placed Mario Pasalic, who was involved in the play immediately afterward, in an offside position at the relevant moment. The offside law requires that the position of a player is judged at the instant the ball is last played by a teammate. If Matanovic touched the ball, even fractionally, the relevant moment became his touch, not the one before it. And if Matanovic touched it, Pasalic was offside. If Matanovic touched it. Matanovic, when asked afterward, said he thought he might have felt slight contact with his hair. He was not certain. He asked the referee directly. The referee told him what the chip inside the ball had registered. That exchange, between a Croatian striker and a Norwegian referee, is the exchange that tells you everything about where football has arrived in 2026. An athlete asking whether something that happened to his own body took place, and being given an answer, not by a human being who was watching, but by a sensor inside a piece of equipment. The technology, according to FIFA, was 100% conclusive. The IMU sensors inside the ball detected the contact and transmitted the data. Former referee Darren Cann, offering analysis for the BBC, backed the decision entirely. He said Snicko, the waveform technology being applied to football, proves the touch 100%. He said the offside stands. The law is clear. If that touch happened, the correct decision was made. But here's the question that Dalic asked in his press conference, and that millions of people watching asked alongside him. Not whether the law was correctly applied, whether football should be applying laws in this way, in this situation. Because what the connected ball technology does is detect contacts that are invisible to human observers, that are invisible to broadcast cameras, that are in some cases invisible to the player who made them. The technology creates a category of football event that did not previously exist as an actionable occurrence. Not because those events didn't happen before, because there was no way to know about them with sufficient certainty to act on them. Now there is. And when that certainty exists, the law requires it to be applied. But here's what that means in practice. A World Cup knockout match in the 103rd minute, with one of the greatest players in football history, making what everyone watching believed might be his final involvement at a World Cup, had its decisive moment determined by a sensor. Not by a player's skill, not by a goalkeeper's save, not by a tactical decision or a manager's substitution. By a sensor reading that detected a contact the player who made it couldn't confirm with his own body. That is not a conspiracy. That is the logical endpoint of a process FIFA began years ago, of applying technology with increasing precision to decisions that were previously made by human judgment. Dalic did not hide what he felt. His post-match press conference was one of the most direct statements a manager at a World Cup had made about the direction of the sport. He said VAR kills the emotions, kills everything inside you, kills what you are experiencing. He said it takes you backwards and robs football of its enjoyment. And then he said something that is worth holding for a moment. He said he isn't saying VAR can't be useful sometimes, but he said, we have gone too far. We have gone too far. From a manager who has been at World Cups long enough to have seen football at its best and its most painful, who has experienced the margin of victory and the margin of defeat in the sport's highest stakes environment, that phrase carries weight. Roberto Martinez's response was the institutional defense that the technology required. The message is very clear, he said. The balls now have a chip, and that is very clear, and that is why VAR intervened. He said the data showed no room for argument. He said today technology helps. Both men were right in their different ways. And the impossibility of resolving the gap between their two positions is the thing that makes this story genuinely important for football. Beyond one match and one tournament. Croatia's fans inside the stadium reacted with the specific fury that arrives when a result is taken from you by something you cannot see and cannot challenge. Bottles were thrown onto the pitch. They were not booing Gvardiol's goal being disallowed because they had watched a clear foul or a clear offside. They were booing the experience of celebrating a goal that the technology inside the ball had already decided to take back before the net had stopped moving. That experience, the gap between the visible celebration and the technological reversal, is the emotional core of what happened in Toronto. And it connects to something that this World Cup has been building toward across every match and every controversy that has preceded this one. The 2026 World Cup has produced 10 disallowed goals through VAR review. 10. The tournament is not yet in the quarterfinals. The Messi challenge in Kansas City, the Balogun red card in Santa Clara, the Jonathan Tah goal against Paraguay, the Ghana penalty appeal against England, and now Gvardiol's stoppage time equalizer against Portugal. Match by match, the tournament's defining stories have been shaped not by what happens on the pitch, but by what technology decides about what happens on the pitch. Not always wrongly, not always unfairly, but consistently, and in a way that is changing the experience of watching a football match in a manner that the sport has not fully reckoned with. Dalek said we have gone too far. Both of those statements can be simultaneously true and simultaneously insufficient. Because the question football is avoiding is not whether the technology is accurate. The connected ball probably detected exactly what it says it detected. The question is what kind of game we want football to be. Whether the precision that technology provides is always the right kind of precision to apply. Whether there are moments, not often, but occasionally, where the human experience of the sport and the mechanical accuracy of the sensor inside the ball are not in conflict but simply measuring different things. Different things that both matter. A Croatian striker in the 103rd minute of a World Cup knockout match who may have touched the ball with his hair. A sensor that registered the contact. A goal that was given and then taken. A 40-year-old Portuguese player on the bench who celebrated a victory he had been waiting his whole tournament to feel. A 39-year-old Croatian player on the pitch who watched his final World Cup hand not because his team were outplayed. Not because a goalkeeper made a great save. Not because the ball hit the post, but because the chip inside it had registered something that his own teammate wasn't sure he felt. Sometimes World Cups aren't decided by goals. Sometimes they're decided by data. What do you think? Did VAR and the connected ball technology protect the integrity of football tonight? Or did it destroy one of the greatest moments this tournament had produced? Was Dalek right that we have gone too far? Or was Martinez right that when the technology shows something clearly, there is no argument to be had? Leave it in the comments. These are the conversations this channel exists for.